organized its own coaches club.
Sorry, forgot to record.
Organized its own coaches club. And Africa is on its way, being helped by Danie Cornelius and Rita Engelbrecht, who are on the panels here. But what's that all about? Well, World Athletics, through GACA, asked us to come up with new initiatives. And one of them is going to be that on every World Championships event, there will be a coaches club. And as of 2025, the coaches club will exist because each country who wishes to host a World Championships must make a facility available for an on-site coaches club. So coaches coming from around the world have got a place to meet, to learn a little bit more in real time, to build the networks and so on. But with the world that we're in now, we're able to do two kinds of coaches club. A hybrid, if you like. We can have on-site and what we're doing right here. And so to dip our toe into the water with this, each area I invited to create their own area coaches club during the Olympic Games. And so for the duration, Oceania, I think I've got 3 events. Nakatvka, I think I've got 3 events. Asia are running 4 or 5 events. And we are organizing one every night. This was Giacomo Galetto's initiative. It put a big burden on him to make the whole thing work, to make sure we had enough panels. And my goodness, we've got a huge array of fantastic panelists now. So without any further ado, one of the reasons this has gone so very, very well this week is because the conductor of the coaching orchestra here is Jimson Lee. He's been doing a fantastic job. Before we get in there, my thanks in advance to all coaching panelists and my best wishes to everybody who's joining in. Please make sure your contribution is heard as we go through this next 90 minutes. Jimson, over to you, my friend.
Well, thank you, Frank, for the kind words. So I'm Jimson Lee from speedendurance.com, and we got every night more and more people join this call, so it's really great to see. So I know everyone wants me to start talking about the 400-meter hurdles. I think if you haven't heard about it, you're living under a rock. But I do want to start with the hammer throw and shot put, only because we have one of our panelists and coaches at Tokyo, which is 2 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know how you stay up to 2 o'clock in the morning, but yeah, I know, exactly. It's a wonderful experience. So we have 2 people I wanted to introduce. One, we have Sean Pickering, and we all know from yesterday. And the other panelist we have is Martin Bingisser from Switzerland. Now, Martin's a world leader in strength and conditioning in athletics and fitness, also a Swiss national hammer and throws coach, international strategic consultant in strength and conditioning and throws. He also has a wonderful website and podcast at hammermedia.com, hammer with no vowels, so HMMR Media. Martin, welcome. Thank you for attending tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll start with Martin, and then Sean can chime in after. So Martin, so what are your thoughts about that first hammer throw? We have Poland's Anita Wolarchuk win 3 golds in a row. Paris is 3 years away, so she might win a 4th. What are your thoughts on the hammer and the fantastic performance from Poland?
I mean, this works. One sec, keep them on a call. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think the Poland being on the top has not been a surprise. Anyone who's been following the hammer throw for the past couple of years sees Poland right at the top, and it's been great for Europe. And yet 4 of the top 5, or 5 of the top 6 finishers were European, which was great. But coming into this, that's a huge surprise. I think everyone expected the Americans to do well. Anita Wolarchuk, Olympic record holder, world record holder, came in as an underdog, but she proved her experience and walked away with the win. I think her stepping up, season best, it was amazing. That's the one storyline. And then the other big storyline was just the Americans. They choked. I mean, they were should have had probably 2 medals, and they finished 8th, 10th, and 11th. So only one of them even made the final, and she was quite far back. I think also noteworthy overall, this is the first Olympics that has not had an Olympic record in the women's hammer throw. The women's hammer throw was added with the women's pole vault 2000, and the event has grown and grown and grown. And now 78 meters is a very good mark, but after the world record in Rio, this is the first time where it's kind of the results have started to level off the past couple of years. And pole vault, I think the Olympic record still back from 2008. So Izambanieva leveled off a bit after her. Maybe we'll see something this year, but it's quite an impressive mark she had. But on the hammer throw, we finally hit that point where it's more, instead of a growing event, it's more stabilized, and seeing who can get those results when it counts, and experience matters.
I'm thankful that it didn't rain like yesterday. Sean, you want to chime in on Martin?
Well, I was just going to say, I just want to echo what Martin said. It was very interesting. We were all looking forward to a great competition, particularly with some of the Americans that have shown really great promise this year. But unfortunately, Deanna Price, who's definitely been the on-form female in the US this year, she suffered a foot injury, and she actually broke her foot after the trials and had 3 weeks where she couldn't throw. And just her timing's been off, and so she's been struggling. To make it in the top 8 was a good job for her. I was disappointed, particularly in Anderson. Much was said about Berry going to step up because she wanted to have the opportunity to make a few statements, some protests and political statements that she's feels very strongly about, but didn't take that opportunity. And I think one of the big beneficiaries of the COVID delay to the Olympics has been Anita Vladarchik, because she had surgery in 2019 on her ankle and wouldn't have made it to 2020 if it had gone ahead then. And so she is very, very thankful. Only came back earlier this year, started competing very gingerly to start with. And so for her to get up to 78 meters is actually quite impressive. And I agree with Martin that, we haven't seen it move forward for this championship, but I think that's really because Deanna Price was injured and Anita was coming back from injury, because if they were both in best shape, they would have really been fighting out at the top. Then there's a group of girls around 75 meters that, had a great competition. And I have to say, particularly Cameron Rogers, the world junior champion, who's I think she's a junior at Cal Berkeley, stepped up, won the NC2As this year, and won and finished here very creditable 5th place for a young girl. And she's a very good talent coming through. So interesting competition. So.
Yeah.
And with Darchik too, as you said, she's coming back from injury. She also changed coaches, and being delayed a year helped her. But at the same time, her new coach, I think, is in Qatar. So she also had a lot of quarantine issues this year, where you're traveling there. She had long stretches where she had to just stay in her hotel for a week or two, wasn't able to train. So it's not been an easy preparation for her, but that 1 year delay meant she was in the mix. And if she's in the mix, she's always a factor.
Yeah, I think it was kind of nice to see the hammer throw in the regular stadium and not on the adjacent football field like most nationals are. So it's kind of nice to.
Well, no, that's only in America, Jimson. That's only in the World Championships and in Oregon. Everywhere else in the world, the hammer usually, hopefully, in a championship takes place in the field.
Yeah. Sean, they put a separate ring in between the high jump aprons, and they're going to do it inside the stadium now.
I know, just without any people around, right? Because it's not safe there, because they've got
it's 2 in the morning.
Jump, a triple jump, and the pole vault runways inside the home straights. So therefore, there's not a lot of width.
It's at 2 in the morning. Oregon time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so the hammer was great. So before Sean goes to bed, let's talk about the shot put qualification for men's. So Martin, should they just give away the gold medal to Ryan Krauser? I mean, just give him the gold. Hi, Ryan, here's your gold medal. Everybody fight for silver and bronze. What do you think about that?
I mean, he's by far the favorite. I think it's going to be really hard to beat. That being said, it's not guaranteed. Joe Kovacs is definitely capable, I think, of throwing as far as Krauser. Whether he gets that in one of his 6 throws, that's the hard part. It's really hit or miss with him. And you saw that in qualification. He needed 3 throws. He didn't get in very convincingly into the finals. But I'm not going to count him out. He's the type of guy, he's strong enough, powerful enough. He could pop one and put some pressure on Krauser. Yeah, and Tom Walsh is always a factor. These guys are a factor, and 22 meters in qualifying from Krauser is good. He made it look like it was not his full effort either. But if he only throws 22 in the final, someone will beat him, I think. So he's also going to need to step it up from qualification. What's really interesting here is quite often the major championships qualifications in the morning and finals in the evening. It'd be interesting to hear Sean's perspective. Now they have not only they got a day off and then they have the final. So it's not even just the next day. They have this rest in between, and what factor that plays into. Because when you had the morning and evening finals, it almost became, these guys are 150, 160 kilos. It's a bit of an endurance sport to compete twice in one day. Now they can fully rest up and we might see performances improve. But it'd be interesting to hear Sean's perspective on that factor.
I think it's going to be a major factor, particularly in terms of who's prepared for it, because it's tough here because you've got a big time change to worry about as well. We had as Martin said, traditionally the shot put has been on the first day, qualification in the morning and final in the evening, so that the shot put men or sometimes women and the 10,000 meters would give medals away on the first day of a championship. So it kind of, the male shot putters usually drew the short straw on that. And then of course in Doha they changed it, and Doha turned out to be one of the greatest competitions in history from a field event perspective, and it showed what happened if you gave the guys a day's rest in between to come back and throw. The difficulty here, and what we've seen, I think, with Joe Kovacs and some of the others, two factors. One is, I think we all agree that the Americans may have overcooked it in terms of coming in a bit late. There's a lot of issues with sort of time change and jet lag, and they aren't functioning very well. But also in this scenario, the time difference between the morning and the evening sessions is very large. And you got to take a decision as to, are you going to prepare your training to throw hard in the morning in order to qualify, like a lot of the guys had to try and do? Or are you thinking ahead, the guys that want to fight it out in the battle in the final, you got to conserve your energy in the morning session and try and get through qualification, and then be ready to go in the evening when you perhaps have been focusing your training. And I think this is one of the factors that happened today, is that someone like Kovacs, would hope that even at sort of 75%, he'd get through qualification and would focus on the final. Ryan just has so much capacity that, he can go out and throw static start 75% and throw 22 meters. The problem comes for him in a major competition with when he steps it up and he's got to throw at 100%, the circle becomes too much of a limiting factor to him, because he's over 2 meters tall, he's 140 kilos. If he drives out the back, he's going to come out the front of the circle. So he always has to be a lot more deliberate and still then try and step it up with the force. Whereas someone like Kovacs, who's 1.80 meters maybe, can really use that circle with full speed. And Tom Walsh also is that kind of athlete that uses the speed and attacks it. I know Kovacs is in good shape. When Ryan set the world record at the US trials, a lot of people are not aware, but Kovacs had a massive warm-up, even further than that world record throw. And okay, he come out the front, but it just shows his capacity is there. So, and those guys would also be focusing on the Olympics, knew that they could get through the trials. So I think they're going to be, those three are still likely to be shooting out. And Darlan Romani from Brazil, we haven't seen much of him this year. We haven't seen much of many of the athletes, but he is such a beast. He's so strong. He threw 22.56 in Doha and didn't make the podium. So he's got a point to prove as well. So those guys are going to be fighting it out. A lot of the other people that we thought had good potential haven't stepped up, and they struggled a lot. A lot of people didn't make it through qualifying, and 20 meters 90 qualified. I think that the big four are the ones that are going to be fighting it out again, as they did in Doha. So looks interesting.
Okay, Martin, any final thoughts on shot put or hammer throw before we move on?
With regards to the travel and time zone point, I think Krauser was one of the few that traveled a lot last year and competed. He went over to Europe quite a bit, and he was also able to show, like as Sean said, his capacity is so large, he can still step off a plane and throw 22 meters. He did that last summer over and over. He did that today. So even on a bad day, he's able to. He's good. I would not see him off the podium. Even if someone manages to upset him or something, he's still going to get a silver or bronze. So he's Mr. Consistency, and maybe someone pops one and beats him, but I still think he's pretty fixed for a good podium spot from the US.
Well, it makes it exciting for tomorrow. Okay, so let's move on to the 400-meter hurdles, and I'm going to call on Rita Engelbrecht from South Africa. She's the world authority on high performance on the both short and long hurdles. She's formerly South Africa head hurdles coach and coached the Olympic hurdlers and mentor to coaches of Olympic and world hurdlers. Rita, welcome back again. Thank you for joining again. Your thoughts on the hurdle world record and gold medal today? Keep it short. Oh, you're on mute. Hang on, you're on mute. Hang on, Rita. Hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you are. That's better. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think that it is such a privilege to say something about this race. I am not going to repeat all the wonderful things that have been said about this race, and I'm sure that the technical information and the technical analysis that's going to come out later is going to far surpass what I'm going to try and say. But what I am saying is that I think what a privilege to watch a race like first three over the world record and a 49.94. What an amazing race. A few observations that I would like to make, first of all, from a technical point of view, is that when Warholm broke the world record the first time, he did 13 strides all the way, okay? And being a hurdles coach, observant about the stride length and stretching and not losing momentum towards the end, he always stretched that little bit on the last hurdle, but he didn't have anybody to push him that hard, so it was okay, and he went through and it was still a world record. Now today, he and Benjamin were very, very close together on the second last hurdle, and Warholm stretched a little bit on the 9th hurdle, and then he went over and he gave 15 strides. So he kept a better momentum, and that, I think, carried him through. According to him, he couldn't feel his legs in the last 20 meters. But if he said, in his own words, he was prepared to die for that medal. So I think that even being tired, he made that adjustment, thinking what he was doing and keeping his momentum going. That is just one observation. And another very interesting thing to note is that in 1948, the 400-meter hurdles, a 400-meter flat record was 45.9 by Herb McKinley from Jamaica. So from 48 to now, they're running the same time. What an incredible achievement. Another observation is that in the Los Angeles Olympic Games, when Moses won in low 47, we all know that he was the first to get 13 strides all the way around. So what has now changed? 13 strides all the way, or a guy comes and he ran 2 strides more than what Moses did on the hurdles, is that what Frank said yesterday, speed can only be improved 2 ways, stride length and frequency, how many strides you're going to give and how fast you are going to give them. So it looks like the top hurdlers are giving less and less strides, but they are running so fast and they are moving their legs so quickly from done by the training all the time. So that is incredible. So I think as coaches, what can we tell our coaches seeing this incredible achievement today is that we need to be more scientific. We need to be more learning the science of stride length, frequency, how to improve, how to get the best of our athletes to remember to make their strong points stronger and make their weak points also stronger. And then also to work harder and smarter. And then, of course, what we've seen now is that the sky is the limit. I must say that if it weren't for his incredible reactions at the beginning of the race, and of course at the end of the race, I would have classified him as a robot. He looked like a robot. He is perfect. His body is perfect. His running is perfect. Every single thing, except the emotions made that I'm sure he's not a robot. And that is about what I wanted to say so far on the 400 hurdles. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Wonderful analysis. I was just sharing internally some people here that there was a Puma press release on July 12th, and they were, I guess, bragging about their shoes, the Evo Speed Tokyo Future Faster Plus shoes or spikes, and they included Carson's name as well as Andre DeGrasse, who's also a Puma athlete. Before we get into too much deep controversy, what do you think about the shoes? I mean, why would Puma announce something on July 12th? Anybody on the panel, or Rita, you want to?
I actually worked out yesterday after the discussion we had that there was a more or less about 3-4% improvement in capacity. Now, if you take an average time of 47 that he used to run quite regularly, and you take about 4% of that, you get to about a 45.8, 45.7. So I'm not saying that I think it's part of the bigger picture, but it might just have played a role in pushing him where he is. I don't know if Benjamin is wearing the same shoes. I don't know from his country, but that is after the discussion we had yesterday. So if you work out that, it does bring him from 47 down to about a 45.9, according to what we discussed yesterday.
No. So one more point about the 4 hurdles. Maybe we get, either Peter or Herbert or Wolfgang can comment on this, but since 2017, Karsten lowered his PR by 2.28 seconds, 2.28. Whereas with Rai Benjamin, since 2018 and his NCAA win, he's only lowered his PR by 0.85. So is it over racing in the college system? Is it just better training? Is it scientific analysis, like you mentioned? Anybody want to chime in on that? Either Peter or Wolfgang or Rita? Well, his progression is amazing. I would love to have those PRs.
Benjamin hasn't got the technical ability of Warholm. His arms are all over the hurdle when he goes over the hurdle. He hasn't got, and I look down the back straight, he tends to swing his whole leg a little bit different. And that all in the end, a little bit of energy here, a little bit of energy there, and in the end, it does count. So I think that at this stage, I think they are absolutely both fantastic athletes, but Warholm is ahead as far as his technical ability. And he has to go over 10 hurdles. And each little bit of energy that he wastes more over those 10 hurdles, I think counts for Warholm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can analyze, slice and dice the 400-meter hurdles forever. So let's just move on to probably the next event. So let's talk about the 800 meters. And let's talk about Athing Mu dominating 800 meters. Great Britain came second and fourth, could have been second and third. Maybe Richie Mercado. Richie Mercado is the president of the NACAC TIFCA, the North America, Central America, Caribbean track and field. Richie, you're based in Texas. What's your thoughts on Athing Mu on 800s tonight?
Well, I got to know her fairly well in 2019 when we had the Pan Am U20 in Costa Rica, and she was 16 years old and goofy, but incredibly talented. She just was, even then, was all confidence and boundless energy. Every time I saw, people talk about her experience, but her strength, she led it from the start, and her strength, she just pulled away. That didn't surprise me. I've only been looking at her from afar. I didn't get to A&M to see her hurdle this year. I will comment about the bronze medalist, though. Raven Rogers beat my girls for 4 years in a row. She went to another high school in Houston, so I know her well, and great young woman. And that was a typical race for her. Start out last, kind of stay in there, and then come on strong. It would have been nice. I would have been really happy, and it would have been nice if Brittany got second, third. But of course, I was happy Raven got the bronze. Not only because she's American, but a Houstonian and a wonderful person. But it was pretty much a typical race for both of them, I think.
Okay, anybody want to chime in on the women's 800? Frank has a hand up. You're on mute, Frank.
Just a quick one, because that was Britain's first, believe it or not, guys, that was Britain's first medal in track and field athletics, which was really not typical of recent years. However, what a fantastic young athlete. I mean, she I think also set a European junior record today. So we had two kids really up in the front, getting first and second, followed through by obviously a fantastic bronze again to give United States gold and bronze. But what a year she's had, winning the European indoors, getting her coach has done a fantastic job with her. He was also the coach to Jenny Meadows. Don't know if you remember her. I just think that's been a wonderful, gentle progression, and what a piece of maturity for both of these young people, gold and silver, in an Olympic final. Both of them in their first Olympics, both of them exercising extraordinary maturity in a race that is traditionally full of tactical mishaps.
Anybody want to chime in on that? It's quiet night tonight. Everyone has their jaw still stuck on the floor after that 400 meters. You got to pick it up and put it back. Okay, well, 800 meters is.
Sorry, can I just finish off one question on that? Maybe to everybody who's listening in here. Should I be surprised that there was no African and North African presence when it came to the fight for medals in women's 800 meters?
In a very strange Olympics, that's all I can say.
Because these girls have been fighting for medals for ever since whenever, yeah. And I think it's odd that there doesn't seem to be anything there at the moment.
Richie, you have comments on that? You have your hand up?
No, I can wait. I had a comment about something else.
Okay, well, okay. Rita has her hand up.
I just want to add to what Frank was saying there, is that after the whole debacle with Caster Semenya and the testosterone test, quite a few girls from Africa were disqualified because of that. Not as well known as what Caster obviously is in a position, but a lot of them we know were disqualified. And that's why I think a new generation of 800s will have to come from Africa, being legally allowed because of the testosterone genetic problem and stuff like that. So that is what I think what has happened.
Okay, well, we'll get to that point, Sean, we'll get to that point when we do the women's 200 meters, because we had a medalist who was from Africa. Sean, do you have a question?
I was just going to make a point. I think one of the things that Frank was maybe alluding to is that we didn't have the East Africans, so that traditionally have been there. Is we didn't have the Kenyans, we didn't have the Ethiopians running that. We had a Chinese lady for the first time running a PR by 2 seconds and running really well. So it's very interesting the change that's going ahead. I mean, 3 Brits in the final. That's pretty interesting. But the lack of Kenyan talent, lack of Ethiopian talent at the lower end at the 800 meters, maybe that's interesting to wonder why they're not looking after that.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, let's move to pole vault. We're making good time here. So pole vault, I want to call on 2 of our panelists. We have Wolfgang Risdorf from Germany, and then we have Herbert Singen from Germany. So Wolfgang, hang on a second, let me just mute everybody here. Okay, so
I'm here.
Yeah, Herbert and Wolfgang are both here. So if you can unmute yourself, talking about pole vault. So Wolfgang is a world leading authority in high performance, high jump coach and performance, director of top international jump and pole vault in Cologne. And Herbert is a world leading strategist in high performance coaching across all events, German national coach and women's pole vault, and personal coach to several Olympic athletes. So Herbert and Wolfgang, let's start with Herbert first. He's first on my screen. What are your thoughts on the men's pole vault tonight, and the lack of Sam Kendricks, and how close he was in breaking the 6.19 meter world record?
Yeah, Sam was really missing. We really missed him there. The competition lacked a little bit of you know, the thrill when 3 or more athletes are fighting for the gold medal. And in the end, it turned out to be a duel between Chris Nielsen and Mondo Duplantis. But we all know that Mondo already, although he's only 22 years old, he has reached a stage that he's harder to beat, almost as Krauser in the shot put. It's going to be very hard to beat him for the next couple of years. And if he's not making some mistakes or gets distracted from track, he can win any competition coming around, I think. And Sam was the only one of the few that could fight against him, at least until Doha 2 years ago. We had a very nice final in Doha 2 years ago, which was very interesting to see. And so this time it was very clear, especially if you looked at the jumps and the height. Mondo actually cleared. So this is amazing what this young boy can produce. If you look at the big picture, the performance in the pole vault of the men has gone through a long phase of stagnation during the last 20 years. We have actually had a higher standard in the 90s, just after the Soviet Union dissolved into several nations, so they could send pole vaulters from Ukraine, from Belarus, from Russia, from Kazakhstan, which all had a world class potential. And I just can say that the last 20 years got more and more boring, although we got new faces, but most of these jumpers didn't really have long careers. And so there is one person that is maybe the most regarded as the most influential, which is Renaud Lavillenie, and he got injured a few weeks before these Olympic Games, so he wasn't up to his best performance. He was not able to produce his normal performance because he had a torn ligaments in his foot. Well, I think we will have better pole vault finals in the global and European and maybe in the other areas championships, because there is a wave of young athletes coming around. When we look at the final 5 of the athletes besides Mondo are only 22 years old. So there's a big chance that they will improve still during the next 2, 3, 4 years. And maybe we'll have a final with a medal, with all 3 medal winners above 6 meters, which we haven't had any time before. But, you know, if you look at Thiago Braz, for instance, he was 23 years old when he was the Olympic champion 5 years ago. He looked almost as promising as Mondo, but he could improve during that time frame due to distractions, due to injuries. And so he came in as 3rd today with a season best, even with 587. So the 603 from 5 years ago a really long time ago. And let's hope he can improve further, because he has a huge potential. But we can say that of almost any of the top finalists. Technically, I think we can see no new trends. There were technically better jumpers if we look at the jumpers from the Soviet Union, as I mentioned before, in the 1990s than today. And even Mondo is technically questionable. He has a very strange variant in the planting of the pole, bringing the pole low down very early, which might be even dangerous because the pole is touching the ground before the box. And if there's a slight higher spot before the box, the pole might even jump over the box. And I know that this happened to him once or twice in warm-up in Doha 2 years ago. And I've seen many young athletes and coaches talking about this variant, thinking about the question if this is probably favorable, bringing down the pole so early. But I think it's a big mistake. And if you then ask me why is he still jumping so high, I can tell you that he's by far the fastest pole vaulter we have seen ever. and he's by far the fastest pole vaulter in this field, and he can get around this technical problem just using his sheer speed and still getting to the heights he's achieving and will achieve in the near future. So technically nothing really new. I don't even see a big national trend. In former times, we've been talking about the French school of pole vaulting with a reining left arm, or the Russian school with the importance of the right shoulder, the extended right arm attacking the pole. All the athletes seem to have more or less problems to achieve a real ideal technique, and maybe there is a time when this gets better, but at the moment I don't see a trend toward technically better vaulters at the top. And because I think the main problem is the lack of speed for some of the vaulters that are technically very good but not as fast to compromise this, but not as fast, and so their potential is not good enough. But last, I'd like to mention the poles. We can say that even after more than 40 years of carbon poles being produced side by side to glass fiber poles, I can say that glass fiber poles still rule above carbon, as we can see in the winners and in the majority of the jumpers in such a final. The carbon poles may have advantages in weight, so it's easier for the athletes to carry the poles in the approach, maybe to plant the poles better. But it is these carbon poles are not as easy to bend as far as the glass fiber poles. And for instance, Renaud Lavillenie would not have been a top vaulter at all if he would have been jumping on a carbon pole ever, or if he would have kept carbon poles before, because he's shortening the pole cord at up to 35% during the jump, while the carbon poles are not being, you can't bend the carbon poles to more than 30% of shortening of the pole cord.
Yes.
So this is
hang on. So speaking of poles, did you see Mondo change poles for his last three jumps at 619? I thought I saw him go to the bag and pull out a different pole than he used for 602. I don't know if you saw that. Hang on.
Yes, I didn't see his last three jumps,
Okay.
but I am sure he must have taken different poles, because he was going a very secure, safe procedure, choosing poles that were slightly too soft, even getting to 602. Okay. But then after that, the broadcast stopped in my country, so I couldn't watch his jumps, but I'm sure he was changing poles on these last attempts on the world record.
Okay, Wolfgang, I want to hear your thoughts. If you can unmute yourself, talk about his poles. What are your thoughts on tonight's pole vault, Wolfgang?
Yeah, no, it's not me to talk about pole vault, because Herbert definitely is the expert, and I think he gave a great analysis. Maybe I just can add one thing. The day before yesterday, we had this discussion of what did Corona mean for the training and competition and training and preparation of athletes. And the end of last year, I had the chance in the European Athletic Coaches Festival of Coaching to have a fireside chat with his mother, Helena, who is planning and guiding his training. And what I learned from this, and what she told me, what she learned from this period, is that after the first Corona breakdown, Mondo skipped training. He stopped it for 4, 5, 6 weeks. He did absolutely nothing. And the mother said, I was totally shocked. I'm a person who believes in the daily planning and in the precise execution of training sessions, and one session following the other. And when my son said, I'm out now, I go for 5 weeks golf, and I'm not interested in training. And then 2 months later, he set a new world record. So this is in our discussion we had the day before yesterday, when it says, yeah, the Corona time gave us the chance to work on weaknesses and to work on individual problems we have, and it gave us more time. That might be another aspect of this time. And it will be interesting to see. We will meet her in the Cologne pole vault and high jump conference in November. She will be a speaker there to say how it continued, what she learned from this time, and how it continued in 2020. And okay, Herbert said I didn't see the last 3 attempts in the pole vault. Fortunately, I was lucky to see it. So first of all, the 602 clearance, Herbert, I think it was a 620 jump.
Yes.
At least.
Agreed, yes.
And the 619 first attempt was far over, and he just touched it on the bar down with his chest. It was almost, and even this jump was 10 centimeters higher. So I think it's not.
If I can chime in on this, this is what you can expect when Mondo is changing the poles to a stronger pole. I don't know the difference, but as you describe his jump, the problems he has in his way planting the pole are really creating these problems. When he's switching to a stronger pole, all of a sudden the jump is not getting into the right direction, but maybe go too steep, and so he's falling on the bar accordingly. Yeah. And it has to do, in my opinion, it has to do with his way of planting the pole.
Richie, you have your hand up? You have a comment? Oh, Richie?
Yeah, well, and it made me think of what Rita said earlier about the 400 hurdles, that the sky's the limit. Well, his first, Herbert, when you see it, his first jump at 619 might have been 635. I mean, literally for him, the sky is the limit. But I think you're right too. He actually moved the pole pretty well. It just, the standards may have been, I think I heard Greg say they had a little mic and it may have been to 70 instead of 75, but literally he brushed his chest. His dad may be having him to be too much bench press, I don't know, but it was an amazing jump on top of the bar, just barely slightly with the chest. And just incredible what he can do in the future.
Wolfgang?
But one last thought about that. We have seen jumps like that from Bubka too. I have one video jumping 611, and he's 20 centimeters above the bar. It was a world record in 1991, and due to problems, you're running into in such a career, he was injured many times. I think he never got into any mental problems in the pole vault, but we have seen athletes going into mental problems because of the nature of the pole vault. You really have to invest a lot of psychic energy. And Bubka ended with a PB of 615. Mondo has improved his world record, but we always thought Bubka one day would jump 630. He never did. And it depends on, as far as I can see, Mondo's career has been marvelous. He's having his parents coach him can be a problematic thing, but as far as I can see, they really got a really good path. Besides some technical things I might criticize, but they really got him onto a good path.
Yeah. And yesterday we were talking about having a coach for a long time coaching. Don't change coaches at the last minute, at the tail end of your career. So now we're a good example of sticking to your same coach for 8, 10, 12 years. Wolfgang, final thoughts on pole vault before we move on to 200 meters.
When I analyze all the other events, I find an amazing number of season bests and PBs or national records, except the pole vault. So it was only 4 of the finalists coming with a season best or PB. I don't know whether it's bad luck or bad chance or the circumstances, but it was far away from what happened in the other events. But the crazy story is not the pole vault. The crazy story is the other events, because this is what we never had before. Such a huge number of PBs, SBs, national records. And I will ask one of my students to do a statistical analysis on this, but I'm quite sure the height, the pole vault is in the range what we found in all the other years, but many of the other events are out of this trend. Okay, so let's move on to the 200 meters. I want to call on Christine Harrison-Bloomfield. If you're on, I know you're on. if you can unmute yourself. So I want to talk about the men's 200 first before doing the women's, because the women's one is going to open up a can of worms on the controversy. So Christine, I think she's on. So she's a former Great Britain national team athlete, now high performance sprint coach, who's worked with Olympic gold medalist Christine Ohurugu. Christine, are you on? Can you unmute?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so men's 200, two things. Lyle's easing up and barely making the finals on the fastest loser time. And Andre de Grasse running 1973 like Mike Marsh did in 1992 in Barcelona. He ran 20 point in the finals. What are your thoughts on the men's 200?
No Lyle's decelerating at the line, I just thought was ridiculous, considering what's happened the whole championships and how people are pushing forwards and coming through at the end. I'm just not sure what's going on with these athletes, and do they think they're so much better than everybody else? Are they disrespecting their opponents? Did he think he was so much better than everybody else that he would be that far in front of everybody else and nobody else is going to push forward? So that's, for me, that's concerning, because I think, you know, I would have thought that coaches would have addressed that by now, because we've had enough people run out, like Sharika in the 200 yesterday. So hopefully, you know, he learns. Well, he's got to learn. He's in lane 2 now for the final. So, you know, you can win a race from any lane. I know people prefer to be in lane 3 to 6, but if you're in shape and you know and you're confident about your training schedule and program, then I feel that he can do it. But it's going to be very tight, because you've got Knighton, the young 17-year-old youngster who has a really poor start, but comes through at the end and is very strong. Admittedly, Lyle's beat him in his trials, but Knighton's got nothing to lose, has he? He's got nothing to lose. But I hope that he improves his start so that he will be pushing de Grasse in the latter stages. De Grasse is on, you know, we've got to look at the 100 meters. He ran a national record and a PB in the 100. So I'm not actually surprised in what he's done here. But if you look at his transition off the turn, it was okay. It wasn't as good as he usually does, but his back end, so the last 50 meters, his maintenance of speed in the last 50 meters was incredible compared to everybody else. And he didn't run through the line. So I'm looking for exciting things from him. National record, 1973. Rayner's got it right with him. And Rayner's got a good ability. Sorry, Rayner has an amazing ability to know what he needs, the strengths that he needs within a race. So he will know what he needs to do in the race to win the gold medal. And so I'm sure that Rayner's going to prepare him in the correct way and tell him what he needs to do come the final.
Yeah. I think it will take 1960 to win a gold medal tomorrow.
100.
Yeah, 1960. Okay, any other comments on the men's 200? It was the semifinals, but still was exciting to watch. We still have a couple more events to go. And let's do the women's 200. I also want to cover the 1500 meter heats as well. I know we have Peter Thompson back from yesterday. Love to hear his thoughts on the 1500. But let's talk about the women's 200 meter. Maybe back to you, Christine, again. Before we get to the whole Namibia athletes and Mamba, or I can't pronounce her name. What do you think about the 200? Elaine Thompson, Shelly Ann coming fourth, Gabby Thomas, you know, winning her medal, which I was rooting for after a long American college season. What are your thoughts on the women's 200?
Well, it played out what I said from yesterday, that Elaine was working on her turn running because she came off just behind Talu. And Shelly Ann Fraser-Price is usually the first person off the turn, and she transitions well out of the turn. I don't think she ran that greater turn personally, looking at where she positioned herself, and she didn't give Elaine Thompson a target to fight with. She was off. Talu was in front, but Elaine Thompson had prepared herself the day before. She knew that her turn running was as superior as Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce and Talu. So I think the race that she ran was incredible, and the back end of her race, nobody else can deal with her. No, her speed endurance is brilliant. Her speed, her natural speed is brilliant. I mean, she's run the second fastest time, and now she's run the second fastest time ever, and a national record. So everything goes well for her future, really.
And last question to you, Shanae Miller-Rebo. Do you think she just like gave up and saved herself for the 400, running out of lane 8? I mean, she didn't look impressive, and we know her. She's a much better athlete than what she ran. Yeah,
but you had Kumbunji and Beatrice Malang. They took her out in the first 30 meters. Muller-Weaver struggled, and look, we were talking about shortening her stride. I don't think that's advantageous for her. That's not the way she runs. I think it's been a mistake personally for her because of her long limbs. I think they should improve it, but work with what she's got, and then she'll come through at the end, which is what she normally does. But I feel that the way they ran around the first 50 meters, she couldn't deal with the speed, and I think she knew that she was beaten by 50 meters. She knew that she was not going to be able to challenge those other girls because of the way they were running. And Elaine Thompson was far superior to all of them.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a good race. Okay, so now the person who came in second place out of nowhere. So I'm going to call on Peter Eriksson. Peter, good friend of mine, former Great Britain head coach, most successful Paralympic team and Canadian Olympic athlete team, now with Canada's Own the Podium program. Peter, welcome back. What are your thoughts on having this athlete and coming in second place?
Well, I think this is a sensitive issue that we need to talk quite a bit about. And today, to not criticize by having an opinion about transgender inclusion or athletes that are born with XXY chromosomes and higher testosterone level has become politically incorrect, right? So it's a sensitive issue to talk about. But I think what we need to do here is that before they set the standards of having 5 nanomole or 10, whatever it is for IOC to participate in a sport, we need to know the implications of that. And it's obvious that these 2 girls that was running for Namibia, and this is nothing to do with Namibia's potential of athletes or anything, they were higher than the allowed 5 nanomoles for IWF. So therefore they were out of the 400 and were able to run the 200. But having said that, if you look at it in a fair play manner, which I try to do when it comes to this issue, is that if any of the other athletes would have up to 5 nanomoles testosterone levels, they'd be suspended for life. And we still allow people in that has an advantage in many ways, both when it comes to the physical attributes, psychological or physiological, muscular, heart, whatever it is, that will help them out to be better than the women. So I think it is a way to stop all of this and then looked at the scientific fact of what impact does it have to be a transgender versus a female? What impact does it have when you have a situation like Caster Semenya or the Kenyan girl who was second in the 800 or the girl who was third in the 800 in 2016? What impact does it have? Let's figure that out before we allow any mix of it, because what we're doing here, in my mind, we're ruining the opportunity for women to compete against women. So I just put in a link to a Facebook organization that look after the women's in sport and doing a lot of scientific research as well. So I'm going to try to put those articles in here so people can read them themselves and then create their own opinion about what it is. But this is just for facts, it's nothing else. But again, I think if we don't start to talk about this more seriously and not do anything about the situation, we're going to be in trouble as a sport in many events.
Okay, no, definitely. We got a lot of hands up here, so if everyone just sort of keep it short to the point. Chris Coy from Calgary, you have your hand up. What are your thoughts on what Peter just said? If you can unmute yourself.
Yes, my comment is this. Are we ruining the chances of short athletes by allowing Yao Ming to play basketball? Are we ruining the chances of white athletes by allowing blacks to participate in athletics because they dominate so heavily? I think there may be some underlying racism there.
Yeah, I mean, good point. Michael Bennett, you had your hand up.
Contentious.
Oh, hang on a second. Michael Bennett, you're up.
Yeah, so one of the things I will bring up in here, and I think one of the challenges to look at, we really have to get down to, as Peter was saying, really the science. Speaking with exophysiologists and endocrinologists and also geneticists to actually find out physiologically and also medical-wise really what is actual differences in sexual development and differences in the body structure and anatomy, and really find out and we try to quantify what that really means. Up until now, at least my personal opinion and my opinion as a coach is that the actual rules now are kind of arbitrary, where they said that no athlete can have over 5 nanomoles per liter of testosterone between the 400 and the mile, but that is a fairly arbitrary races to save, because what's to say if somebody has high testosterone that they won't do better in a marathon, or if they have high testosterone they won't do better in 100. So in my opinion, it really was to push Katsamina out of the 800 meter dash versus really trying to protect all the athletes. And to be honest with it is, at the same time, it actually hurt her and then other athletes from being able to continue in their sport. So I think we really have to do a lot of work to both make sure that we keep the sport fair as possible, and also make sure we do not negatively impact some athletes that really do want to compete. And they're not men, because it's very different when you're talking about a woman that may have some things different than other women compared to somebody that's transgender. If somebody's transgender, they made an actual choice to have a sexual reassignment surgery or something along those lines versus somebody that was born a little different. So I think we have to really do something major on that.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I like that. Thank you. You got a couple of claps here. A lot of comments. I'll go in order here. We have Annie Udo Obong. You had your hand up. Can you speak on your comments?
Oh, yes. Thank you. It's unfortunate that we're talking about her biology rather than the marvelous race she ran. And I was about to talk about the technicalities of her race and trying to see how physiologically possible it was that I saw. In my calculation, she actually had a second phase of acceleration during the last 50 meters. So it's sad because the IOC at the moment, we've had in the weightlifting yesterday, a transgender athlete. And like the last speaker said, when you by choice decide to change your sex, there's no complaint about it. But for someone that doesn't have a choice and is born by that, there are lots of complaints on which races you can run. I mean, who are we to tell what is right for a particular race and what is wrong for a particular race? If there is no blanket ban across the board, we shouldn't decide to pick and choose what we can do. And I'm sorry to say, but there's always a hint of racism in what we see, because this kind of thing was put to eliminate caster, like this last speaker said. And also, if you look around, especially if you look around about those that go through a lot of transgender or sexual transformation in transgender, quite frankly, we look at the statistics, it's more European or more Western than African or Asian. So I think that, and that is being accepted, while the the chromosome or the X chromosome or the XXY, whatever they call it, is we are still learning about that, and I think more studies need to be done. But I feel that now, whatever you're born with and how you identify as sexually, you should be allowed to run, and there shouldn't be any kind of man-made restrictions.
No, good point, Annie. Next is Frederick Agbaji. Your comments, please.
Thank you, Father. My question from the speaker, from the first speaker. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, you made mention of if any other, if would have been any other athlete that have more than 5% of chromosome, he or she would have been banned for life. And I want to know if there's any, you have any examples of such people who have gone through that?
I think, I'm not sure. First speaker, is that Peter? Peter?
Yeah, that was me. I was referring to doping, that if you're artificially doping yourself and get a high testosterone level by using testosterone, for example, and you come up to the 5 nanomole, whatever it is, or above that, you get suspended for life. But I also want to make a point out of this, and this is the problem with this type of discussion, is the fact that this has nothing to do, to me, about race, religion, female versus male. If a person chooses to be transgender, I'm okay with all of that. But we always slide the discussion by letting racism into the equation rather than the fairness for women in sport. That's the way I look at it anyway. And I think that's the hardship we have, because in 2016, when I was a head coach for the Canadian team, Melissa Bishop was 4th and Lindsay Sharp, I think, was 5th or 6th. And Lindsay Sharp was the only one that dared speaking up about it. And she was shut down quite fast with death threats to her family. And then the point of being a racist. And I know Lindsay really well. And there's none of her purpose was that, but it was her disappointment is to not being able to compete in a fair manner. So it's always a sensitive issue, and that's why it's sensitive to bring it up. But I think we need to look at the aspects of what is fairness in sport. Why did we create the women's division if it's not for women? You know, and I don't know what is a fair level of saying this many nanomole versus this many. I don't know that, but what I'm saying is that I think we need to have a better base of research, base any discussion about it without just taking a number and dropping it in as IOC or World Athletics have done at the present time.
No, agree with that. It's like the false start rule, right? 0.100 is a nice even number. They're using numbers like 5 millimeter or 5 nanomolar. So, Rita,
can I reinforce the question if you don't mind?
Can you get Rita had her hand up first? Can you just get her, or just 1 second? Rita, and then I'll get to you. Don't worry, Frederick. Rita, you had your hand up on that.
Thank you. I would just like to comment on the 2 Namibian girls. They are both still at school, and they were allowed to run and break world junior under 20 records, etc. before officially it was announced that they couldn't participate in the 400. So yes, I understand the huge impact it has on those girls. They don't understand it. It wasn't made clear to them by their coach, which incidentally, his wife is a medical doctor, but they didn't pursue the matter when there was a lot of talk about it. So it seems to me like sometimes these girls get exploited because they are so good and they say are so brilliant, but there is also a very human factor to it. The human factor is that these girls are at school and they don't understand exactly what's going on, even if it's explained to it. But also, I agree 100% with Peter. If you are going to make this a racist issue, that is not science. Science is about facts. It doesn't matter. It might be that different color people, white, pink, yellow, whatever is going to come through in the future with the same problem, and they will most probably have to be treated the same way. So if you do not fall in the normal range and you fall out of it, there's a problem. And as far as I understand, that can be a genetic problem because of a mutation, or it can be a chromosomal problem. Not all are the same, and not all have the same level of testosterone at such a high level. So it's different in all of them. But I also agree that more, according to what I understand, the IAAF didn't want to rule on the 200 and the 100 because, and the other events, because they didn't have enough material to support it, and they're not going to court and going to lose the case. So yes, there's a lot of research need to be going on with that, but the answer at the moment is very difficult, and I think it's sad on both sides.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you.
Good point. Christine, you had your hand up. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the discussion, I mean, I read some articles yesterday and today, and people called them men. Now, we've got to be very careful that, you know, we've gone through a pandemic. People are emotionally unstable. And I think we have to discuss this because my athletes have talked about it. Athletes around the world are talking about it. Now, I'm happy for those ladies to run in the competition, okay, because they were told that they can run. So if they were told they can run, allow them to run and judge them on their performance that they produced in the competition. However, once the competition is over, we have to, as coaches, bring this to the federation and say, this is not acceptable. And there are a lot of disgruntled athletes who have worked tirelessly for years and years to compete in Olympic Games, and they feel, rightly or wrongly, whether the person was black or white, they feel cheated, and we've got to address that, because it's a critical point. When you say that, oh, it's because, you know, I understand that it's because they're black, and I probably highlighted it. I met Caster Semenya, and she was a lovely person, and she was quite feminine. Okay, that's my opinion of her. Right, somebody would have a different opinion. She had a very deep voice. I have a very deep voice. Doesn't mean that I'm a man. I'm very muscular. Doesn't mean that, you know, I've got higher testosterone levels. Did anybody test me when I was running? No, they didn't. So why all of a sudden, because you've got these outstanding performances, are we making these comments? Well, if we're concerned about this, then we need to go to the IAAF and we need to get some information. We need to do some research so that we can make a definitive discussion and a definitive point that say, right, you're not allowed to run in this race, or maybe make an additional race for them so that they can perform. Because why shouldn't they be able to perform and compete at this level? Why shouldn't they? So then we just like we have Paralympics, then in our competition, then maybe we can have, and I know it sounds really horrible, but you know, then it's a win-win for everybody. Then everybody has the opportunity to win an Olympic medal and to compete at this level. So, but I think we need to not batter those young girls. They're 18 years old. We need to protect them rather than batter them, because I think it's very unfair what people are doing and what people are saying about them.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, a lot of hand claps here. Frederick, I promise.
Mine just a question. Yeah. Back to Peter Eriksson. Are you drawing a parallel line between somebody who decided willingly to go juice up himself, quote unquote, you know, than somebody who was born with it? Are you drawing a parallel line between the two of them?
No, not at all. And I think that, as Rita said, it's unfortunate that any girl is born and end up in this situation, and we don't want to prevent them from competing. And I can't compare them to somebody that is doping, but what I said is that the one that had the same level of testosterone and it doesn't have a medical issue or being on suppressive of testosterone, they would be considered a doper, right? So there is the advantage come with whatever they were born with or whatever suppressant they have to take in order to get to the right level. I don't know if I make myself clear, but it has nothing to do, I don't compare them to dopers. I feel really bad about it, and as Christine said that I met Caster as well, and I think she's a lovely person. This has nothing to do with the person. It has to do with the unfortunate situation for both transgender and the one that is born with a medical issue. We just need to solve it so we don't have. I was the first one to talk to Melissa Bishop after the 800 in Rio, because I was the head coach for the Canadian team, and she was devastated. And what do I say? I mean, it's hard to say anything. She knew what was going on, and she was very upset about it. And I think she lost her opportunity to perform because of the situation. And she doesn't want to speak up about it, and she didn't want to make a fuss out of it, but she couldn't come back from it.
Good points. I know Michael Bennett has a lot of comments on the chat. Please check them out. Michael, do you still want to speak, or is everything you said on the chat? No,
it's always.
Okay, good, excellent. Yeah, I know when back in 2009 when Castor won at World Championships for the first time. I know back in Canada, I was still living there, and we had a good friend named Diane Cummins, 800-meter runner. And I know she was quite vocal about the whole Castor situation, but, you know, for her to come in 5th or, you know, 6th, you don't know. I mean, it's hard. It's easy for us, or for me as a coach, sit here and make these rules or try and get these rules changed. But I think, it's much harder when you're on the field. Danie Cornelius, I haven't spoken to you. What were your comments on some of this hot topic?
Yes, I would like to comment because Castor is actually a member of my club, and in 2009 when it happened, I was there. So I had to deal with this as well. And what was just sad is that the way they treated these Castor, and that's exactly what I'm also worried about. That these two ladies, I mean, it's not their fault that they are born that way, and the way that they're being treated and being dealt with, and the way that the people are referring to them, I think it's very, very unfair. It's like a short guy and a tall guy. I mean, if you're born short, you're born short. If you're born tall, you're born tall. So it's not their fault that they were born like that. And I know Castor was really in a bad shape because she came from a rural area in the northern part of South Africa, and she was actually running in the World Juniors just before she went to the World Championships. And at the World Championships, it was like a bomb exploded. The poor girl didn't know what was what, and she was like a deer caught in the headlights. And I think that was very, very unfair. So I do agree there should be some scientific research there should be research done on this, but I think they should be very, very careful also how they treat these people, and to see how they can in a humanely way, and also in a way that you would like to be treated, also to treat them so we can take care of this. Because I spoke to Castor when she was trying to do the 5,000. I said to Castor, why the 5,000? She says, well, I can't do the 400, I can't do the 800, I can't do the 15. Now it's either the 3,000, there's no 3,000 Olympics, and it's also steeplechase. I can't do steeple, so let me try 5,000. But it was unfair to her also, and to force drugs on her. That is the main thing, basically, what we don't realize. We are against people using drugs for performance enhancement, but now we are forcing a person to use drugs to lower her performance, which I think it's silly. But anyway, that's just my take on it. But because I dealt with Castor very, very, like I said, when she came through the process, I was actually part of that. And I really felt sorry for her at some point in time.
Yeah, good. Frank, you had your hand up for a long time. Sorry. You're on mute. You're on mute, Frank.
Obviously, I get the entire discussion. But we find ourselves, this is such a complex thing because it's one ethical dilemma after another as you go through each step of all of this. First of all, as far as these girls are concerned today, I think standing back from it, it is deplorable that people are criticizing these two girls because neither of them have broken any rules. The rules have been set, they've lived within them, and that is that. We're not good. It's not for us to try to go back in time and try to suggest that they shouldn't have been there in the first place. They're entitled to be, and that's all there is to it. However, let's go to another aspect of this ethical dilemma, and it's been touched on by Rita, by Christine, and by Danie. I'd like you to imagine that one of these girls is your child. I'd like you to imagine that for a moment. And to imagine that because the situation has not been managed much earlier in their lives, they are now in the full glare, the fishbowl of world opinion and world media. These girls are being destroyed. Imagine if this was your daughter. And I think that is the deplorable part about this. Here we are talking about it as if it's a very simple scientific set of rules and things, but it's not, folks. It's not. And as my friend Frederick was very, very quick to point out here, some people deliberately decide, I don't want to be a man anymore, I want to be a woman. That is quite different to someone who's had the misfortune to have a genetic mutation and come into the world with it. Have you any idea, that my friends from South Africa will know this very well, have you any idea the damage that would do to that Castor's situation, because it ended up in the glare of the world publicity, the damage not only to her parents and to her, but to her community. And out of that, you're dead right. You were going to have serious racial issues coming out of all that, quite unfairly. And so I think whilst we can all be very clever having this open discussion, and it should happen, that is for people who make the decisions to sort this out once and for all. But meanwhile, let's not pretend that there will not be more young women coming into sport who've had this same problem. The issue, and my opinion is, it hasn't been managed properly and humanly early enough. That's all I've got to say on that.
Okay, we got like 5 minutes left here. I don't know, Peter Thompson, I think you're on here. We forgot the 1500 meter heats, and I don't know if you want to spend, like, say, a few minutes on the 1500. Like, should they just give the gold medal to Jakob Ingebrigtsen, or should let him fight it out for 3 rounds? Peter, your thoughts on the morning rounds on 1500, if you're still here?
Yeah, before I get to the 1500, Jimson, I just want to come back, and I really appreciate all the conversation that's been taking place on the athletes in the women's 200 final. And my personal take on this, because I've been around this many times, back in as far as 1976 with the and then going into the US women's marathon trials in '84, where we had an athlete with the same condition who was pilloried in the media for this. So it's not something which is new. It's something which has been going on for a long time. And I was in Berlin, Danie, when Castor was put on the slab of media scrutiny. And I think it comes back to the member federations. I think member federations have a responsibility here, all of them. So I'm not going to kind of isolate any one, but any member federation suspecting that an athlete, you're going to see them in home competition. I've seen them in home competitions. They should be kind of flagged and discussed with World Athletics before they're taken to a championships. So they should never be kind of laid on the slab of media scrutiny. It's up to the member federations to protect these athletes. They're the ones who, at the end of the day, should be protecting them and keeping them safe. And I think this situation with Namibia is perhaps some of the Namibia, the organizing committee there just wanted to get these athletes there because they knew they could do well without any regard to the effect it might have on the athletes, just as with Castor in 2009. So I think if the member federations if World Athletics can set up some way where confidentially athletes can be submitted for scrutiny, then that will protect them from going to a championship and then having what's happening. Yes. So the next issue is, I'm going to get to the 1500 in a moment, but the 200, just quickly with Arian Knighton. You might all want to know that in the US Olympic trials, you probably saw this, Arian Knighton, being a young, inexperienced sprinter, blasted each of the 3 rounds. And when it came to the final, he was probably a bit overcooked. In the semifinals, he went well ahead of Noah Lyles and turned and they laughed at each other, and Noel just kind of laughed out loud. And it's probably because Noah knew how much he was running within himself. And so I think what I'm seeing with Arian Knighton, his slower start and the way he ran was much more under control. So I think When you see him at his full flight, it's a Usain Bolt type experience. He's really an exciting talent. 1500, very briefly, I don't see it as being Jakob necessarily as kind of I think it's a very open situation. I'm just amazed, I'm sure you all were when you watched it, that you had 3 rounds and the second round went so slow. And with that number of next fastest times to go through, that was just suicide. I mean, every middle distance runner who thinks they can outkick everybody else was proven wrong. And so you had no time qualifiers coming from the middle heat. You had 2 coming from the first heat, and which was run at a kind of a robust pace. And then the final heat, all 4 time qualifiers came from there. And one of the commentators on one of the channels I was watching suggested that athletes should not be aware or not be told of what's gone on before, because that's an unfair advantage. Well, I actually think it's part and parcel of coaching is this happens at every championships, and you shouldn't be doing what you're doing in that middle heat. But the difference is, it certainly, I don't think it should be announced in the stadium, whereas at the US Olympic trials during the men's qualifying rounds, the announcer in the stadium was continually saying what the athletes needed to do to qualify, which I felt was an entirely inappropriate technical information. And I'm sure that Jeff Whiteman is not doing that in Tokyo. But anyway, that's a real brief one, Jimson, on the 1500. I think it's going to be an exciting semi-finals. I think Matthew Centrowitz, his father is Matt. Matthew Centrowitz, I think, will do really well. I think there's going to be some surprises there. I think there's many names that we are not familiar with who are going to pop up and get on the podium.
Yeah, I actually forgot one event, and thanks, Sean, for reminding me. That's the women's long jump. I guess the Americans were rooting for Brittany Reese, and you know, in long jump, anything goes. They're not using that silly format as we see in Diamond League. I was wondering, Wolfgang's still here, I hope. Perhaps you can chime in on the women's long jump, because she left her German coach, and because of COVID, she was actually forced to go back to him. Wolfgang, is he still here?
Yeah, I'm still here. Unfortunately, I just watched the summary because it was in the middle of the night here at home, and I did it for the men's high jump qualification, but not tonight. So what I saw in the summary, it was really a thrilling competition, and it was quite an excitement for a German long jumper girl, because the season was quite a lot up and downs, having a lot of problems with the run-ups. She spent the whole last season with a shortened run-up, with a 16 strides run-up, moved back to the long run-up this year, and it didn't work too good. And even in her winning jump today, she lost 19 centimeters at the board, jumping 7 meters, while the others, Reese and the third,
Broom.
Yes, sorry, yeah, she had a perfect touch on the board. And I was also surprised, but maybe my American colleagues know better, to find Brittany Reese back. I think she didn't have a comfortable season as well. And I'm really happy for my friend Jeremy Fisher to bring her back to that level. And if you see him, Peter, please pass my greets whenever you meet him. And so for Germany, it was a wonderful competition with the last round 7 meters winning jumps after a very quite crumpy season. This is what I saw from the summary. Sorry, but I don't have more details on that.
No problem. Sean, do you have any comments on that?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think, to her credit, Brittany Reese said that she will not go to the Diamond while they have this stupid format. So she's taken a stand against that and therefore wasn't competing, stayed in California. And I think that's a very important thing that we should all be grateful for her to do that. And this is her 5th Olympics, I think, and performing very well. The other thing that I thought was very interesting is that, like, places 1 through 8, there was 20 centimeters. It's pretty close. 680 was 8th place, and 7 meters only one at 7 meter jump. So everyone was really, really close. It was 1 or 2 centimeters between the places, and some very good competition anyway. And as Wolfgang pointed out, that if Mihambo gets it right and hit the board properly, that was a 720 jump, which is pretty impressive. But actually 7 meters, 797, 796, it was a very, very close competition and could have gone to anyone.
No, yeah, like I said, long jump, anything goes. And like I said, I'm glad they don't use that Diamond League format. We got a few more minutes here, and I forgot the 110-meter hurdles heats, men's. Rita, if you got a few minutes, you want to talk about the men's heat? Kind of surprised that some athletes didn't show up, like Ortega or Shubenkov. Any thoughts on the men's heats this morning?
Yes, I think that there's a lot of similarities for me between the 110 and the 100-meter hurdles women. There was like one outstanding 13:03 Holloway from the US, and apart from that, I think it goes up to 13:17, 23, 24, 21, 37. Those are times we didn't normally see in a world champs or Olympic games. But I think that, again, maybe it is just like the easy run before the semi-final, and I'm looking forward to the semi-final tomorrow, because I think more is going to come out, but that there are new kids on the block and there are new athletes from different nations. It's not the same dominant ones anymore that like we used to see, like you previously said. That is very different. And I think one very important thing is for me is this whole discussion about all these fantastic results is that the exceptional is now becoming the norm. Yeah. There is no middle of the road. It's all exceptional. So that now is becoming our new normal, whether it is with additional good poles in the pole vault, the carbon poles, the additional better running shoes or training or tracks or whatever, but the exceptional is now the norm. No. So yes, we'll see. It's very good times and on average, but it's not as good. I would have thought maybe somebody would get closer to sub 12, sub 13, but let's see tomorrow after the semi-final, and hopefully I'll have more to say on that then.
Okay, well, we look forward to that tomorrow. Actually, back to the long jump. I want to call back on Danie Cornelius. He's the head of TuksAthletics at University of Pretoria, high performance coach in long and triple jump. Now he's the manager of Athletics South Africa Relays Program. So back to the long jump, Danie, what's your thoughts on what Wolfgang and Sean said?
It's true. It was a very exciting competition, and I think going into the competition in the top 12, there were 7 girls that actually jumped 7 this year, and only 4 of them advanced to the top 8. And it was a seesaw competition. I know she Bomba, she actually opened with a 697, which I think Brume, she opened with a 697, and everybody thought, well, this is it. And then when I was really impressed with Brittany. Brittany was exceptional. I think she handled the pressure. You can see she's a seasoned athlete. But there were some other athletes as well, younger athletes that came through. But I think Brittany, and then, like I said, at the closing, I really thought it was going to be a duplication of the men's long jump, where we're going to have 2 men or 2 ladies also sharing the gold, or the same, not sharing the gold, but sharing the same distance, but having to go on count back. And then Mihambo came on a final jump, and she jumped the season's best to jump a 7 meters, which I think that just shows character. You know, if a person can come in your last jump, that's normally when all the pressure are there. And then to overstep or to do funny stuff in your is always very, very easy. And she was a cool as a cucumber, and she jumped to 7 meters. which I think is amazing. So it was very exciting. I think the last round was, as all the other jumps were very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to the triple jump as well, which I also think is going to be very, very exciting.
That's great. Thanks a lot. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up? Any more? I think we covered all the events. Big night tonight. I think that's it. Frank, do you want to close this up, and then I'll do my final thank yous.
Yeah, well, very quickly, fantastic discussion tonight across a whole range of things. And I have to say, I really find myself pretty excited going through each day, looking forward to what's going to happen in the evening and listening to your opinions. Thanks very much indeed for the real high quality input from the panelists here. What a day we've got ahead of us tomorrow. Women's 400 meters hurdles. Will that be a good event or what? That's going to be special. Women's steeplechase is going to be pretty fantastic. Men's hammer, 800 and 200 meters. What a fantastic, and of course, the great events are start tomorrow, decathlon and heptathlon. So we've got some wonderful stuff ahead. Yeah. Thanks very much again to all of you. A particular thanks, of course, to you, Jimson. I think you've managed this very well today because there was such a range of topics and such a range of issues that are coming out now. One small thing, Jimson, before I pass back to you, is that I did say that the Global Athletics Coaching Academy is responsible for representing coaches. And that representation starts at area coaches level. So you will be pleased to know that one issue is already up in front of World Athletics, and that is the issue of the Diamond League format for field events. That is definitely up to be seriously considered. And the other one, of course, is that's been brought up recently, is the rankings approach to selection for teams. So these are on the way. However, these issues are brought to life by you, the coaches. And if there are any issues before the end of this week, let's hear about them. Jimson, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Frank. So I want to thank the 8 panelists tonight, because without them, this would not have been possible. So start off with Martin Bingisser and Sean Pickering. Don't forget to check out Martin's website, Hammer Media. Wonderful podcast as well. We had Christine Harrison-Bloomfield. We had Wolfgang Ritzdorf, Herbert Thingen from Germany, Danie Cornelius, Peter Eriksson, and we also had Peter Thompson, our non-panelist panelists. So thank you, all 8 people, all 8 panelists. Wonderful talk. Again, tomorrow night, same link, same time. Please join, tell your friends. We had like 65 people tonight, bigger and bigger every day. It's going to get bigger, over 100, 150 by the end of the week. And yeah, that's it. Thank you again. Really appreciate it. Like, we kept it civil. I know we got heated a bit, but that's what makes this group really wonderful, because we're all adults, and Frank said we can make a change. We can make a difference. We just got to get the right people, the right processes. So once again, tomorrow night, thank you. 6 o'clock UK time, 10 Pacific, 7 p.m. Europe, and you know where you live. And see you all tomorrow night.
Great job, everybody.